They weren't going to play the big cities. They were going to tough it out. I mean, they were pissed off that they had to deal with the shit that they had to deal with. That's pretty fucking real. Like that. And I've actually heard, there's a sound check from the San Francisco Filmer Show. As a matter of fact, Alejandro was in the Nuns. He opened them up. The Nuns were one of the opening bands, Alejandro Escovedo, for that San Antonio show. Yeah, it was tough. People wanted to kill him. Randy's Rodeo is a very famous picture of the marquee. It says Sex Pistols, Randy's Rodeo, and then I think Merle Haggard is playing a couple days later or something. I remember, reading about that. I mean, this was before, because they were on the cover of Rolling Stone, and Rolling Stone never really liked them or embraced them. And Rolling Stone was very sort of West Coasty, Linda Ronstadty, Eaglesy, regardless of what they said. Supposedly they were, but really they favored that. Jan Wenner favored that sort of easy to listen to West Coast thing. But I had been an Iggy fan early on. Stooges. That was, like, I don't know, like, I was like the MC5. I didn't really think of that as like punk rock. Now looking back, if you read, that book by Colin Haywood, From the Velvets to the Voidoids, or if you read the Lakes McNeil oral history, Please Kill Me, you can see where the Velvets and Per Ubu and Iggy, was seminal and very. There was something very exciting about that. And so I remember reading about the Pistols and being intrigued by it. And then I'm trying to think of what it was. I mean, because the Clash were, supposedly punk rock, but they were more palatable. I mean, they really were. The Pistols, America has difficulty with irony anyway, I think, to some extent. So there was stuff on that album that people took seriously, that he was a very smart guy. I had dinner once with Lydon, and we hung out for an evening. I was in a entourage. I knew some people that had signed Public Image to Elektra. They were good friends of mine, so we ended up going to eat afterwards, or whatever. Very smart guy, very volatile. He had as a child, because of his spine, he had some really painful situations that he had to deal with, which I think, I don't know, this is conjecture on my part, admittedly, but I think that, just made him pissed off. He did suffer fools, whatever. And, unlike Malcolm McLaren and Vivian Westwood, they were pretty influential and whatever. He was pretty smart about keeping himself. Anyway, the Clash were much more. That was Bernie Rhodes' deal, and they were. And I got the Clash before I got the Pistols. Really, if I remember distinctly, somebody had the first album. We had smoked some weed. I was up in their bedroom. I put it on. I remember hearing Garage Land, or Garage Band, and it really resonated with me, and I got it. Then I went back, and there was things like The Damned and the Pistols that I got. But then, the now, admittedly, if you look at some of these pictures, they had a security team that was carried with them. Malcolm McLaren, particularly to watch over Sid, who was a heroin addict. They had hired somebody that were trying to watch him and make sure he didn't score or whatever. They were ineffective, but they were around. Anyway, on these pictures, you can't really see it, but they had a front line. So they could be pretty, but they were pretty fucking ballsy. I mean, they were children, and really, and to go into this place, I had a lot of respect and admiration for, this is what we do, and fuck you. I mean, you listen to it now, it's not really that. At the time, I remember, even the Ramones, I remember thinking, whoa, this is, rap now, it's so palatable. I mean, you don't. Public Image was infinitely more sonically radical, you know. So yeah. So I kind of loved him. It was exciting. I mean, somebody could make an argument that there's a certain strain of maybe, for lack of a better term, hyperpop, which in some respects, as weird as this is to say, shares things. It has certain things in common with punk rock. The DIY aspect of SoundCloud, the ability to do that, the sort of embracing of being adventurous sonically. The producers, I think, are now. So anyway, there is a thing, I mean, there's still fucking. That was the first F-bomb I laid, by the way, if you've noticed. There's still, there's bands from the Midwest, children, that use a lot of the Pistols thing, and it's how many years later? 50 years later, almost. So it is amazing how influential they were, how hated they were at the time. I remember, I'm always skeptical of, in my high school, maybe there was one other Velvet Underground fan, maybe one other Stooges fan, maybe. So, but so many of those other bands that were huge at that time, talk about it. Still talking about the Pistols. Still, it is kind of amazing. And I think that Malcolm McLaren and Vivian Westwood and Lydon, very important to mention, they had a vision for the future, and come hell or high water, So yeah.